Hello, I'm Tony Power, founder and principal consultant of Just Culture Consulting based in Melbourne, Australia. And I'm joined once again by Paul Stretton, who, as I say, is one of the most innovative thinkers in the Just Culture space. Paul, how are you today?
I'm well, Tony. Thank you. It's good to see you again. Although I must admit, if anything, I'm a little bit sad because this is our last video in this series, and I've been reflecting on all the ideas that we've covered in a short period of time. Really, we started off at the very beginning looking at the damage of blame and fear that can have in an organisation, and so as a result, looking at James Reason's work, the classical approach to just culture is to try and challenge that. We then looked at Sidney Dekker and the role of restorative practice or restorative just culture. We then spent an episode talking about my work, which is obviously wonderful, looking at a hybrid or revised approach somewhere between the two. On the last video, we looked specifically at accountability, which was something that we kept talking about and mentioning, and so felt it was so important that we looked at it on its own and utilised your legal expertise in particular on that one. And the amazing thing is that even though we've covered a lot of ground, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface with these ideas, really. And so we maybe need a little bit more time to explore them in more detail in a masterclass, perhaps. Of course, at the end, Tony, we'll share people the details of our masterclass upcoming, which I know we're incredibly excited about. But for now, what are we going to focus on, Tony, on our last episode?
Yeah, so given that it is our last episode in this series, at least for now, we're going to be talking about implementing Just Culture, how to do it, some potential pitfalls to avoid, and we're going to be talking about the potential benefits that Just Culture can bring to an organisation.
Perfect, and well, obviously this is important to take theory, put it into practice. It's something that we've worked both on with lots of organisations in the past. So what's your view, Tony? Where do organisations really need to start so that they're successful on their Just Culture journey?
I think it's really important to recognise right at the outset that, to pick up on the word that you use, it is a journey. It's not just about grabbing a policy document and chucking it down and go, all right, we've got a Just Culture now. It is about a journey of building mutual trust through consistent behaviour, and that does take time and working together. I think probably one of the first steps is to create a steering group or a planning group who's going to lead the planning and implementation of the Just Culture within the organisation. And one of the sort of first elements that you really need is that senior management commitment to say that this is something that we want to do in our organisation. This is the kind of organisation that we want to be. Where just and fair is part of who we are as an organisation. And so that involves senior management having a belief in the concepts and principles of Just Culture and the confidence of the benefits it'll bring to the organisation and the people in it. And that also involves senior management being willing to extend some trust. If they want the frontline staff and others in the organisation to trust them, then senior management need to extend that trust themselves. It's something that's got to be mutual. And then also they've got to allocate the resources to be able to implement Just Culture. And that's part of that commitment as well. Obviously, it's critically important to include all the relevant stakeholders in the design process. Just Culture is not just a safety thing. It's got to involve the entire organisation, HR, legal, operations, unions, whatever is appropriate for your organisation. You probably need to recruit some internal Just Culture champions or advocates to promote Just Culture within the organisation, to be a resource for people who have questions about it. And of course, you want to review where you're currently at. So you perhaps do a bit of a gap analysis, looking at what you currently do, your policies and procedures, what capacities you've got, so that you know what your starting point is, to then work out the direction that you want to move forward.
Yeah, I agree, Tony. I think it's really important, firstly, that you've got that senior support for the changes, but also appropriate representation throughout the business to make sure that the journey that is being set is the right one for that organisation. And so what is it we really want to try and achieve? And historically, there haven't been a range of ideas around just culture. We had the classical approach, and that's it. Whereas now, the things we've looked at over the course of this series is that there are a range of ideas, and I find that quite exciting. I think now that organisations have the opportunity to look at different models, different ideas, the nuances between them, and see which ones fit their needs most. And I suppose within that, I would also strongly suggest that the approach is not dictated by a flowchart or checklist or model. And actually, it's about the values and the purpose of the just culture approach that should be the guiding principles for everything that follows. And for example, I've lost track now of how many times I've had a conversation with somebody that's working in an organization that aspires to create a just culture. And so they're committed to it, but those people don't feel like they work in a just culture and still have that perception of fear and blame, particularly after an incident. So I think we need to really deeply consider workplace language, the idea that words create worlds, and are they congruent? Are they in line with the values of the just culture that we're talking about? So, for example, even the term investigation, is that appropriate, or would a learning review be more conducive to our just culture journey? How do people feel about terms that we use in human factors a lot, such as normalization of deviance or violations? Do the incident responses themselves identify people as being a root cause? For example, I think there's lots of work that we need to look at in and around that. Also, though, I think we should recognize that whilst all this takes time and consideration, despite our best intentions, our approach should adapt and evolve over time a little bit as well. And so once we've got our destination, once we've got our purpose, we know where we want to go on our journey, we've got our vehicles, they're fit for purpose. To overdo an analogy, what would you then recommend, Tony, in terms of implementation, actually getting into action?
Yeah, I think you need to basically start at the top and work your way down. Obviously, as we talk about having senior management get on board, but you need to be able to build those capabilities. So certainly in larger organisations, you might need to proceed in stages with different parts of the organisation, and particularly as well because each part of the organisation might need some adjustments to have a just culture implementation that actually is appropriate and meets the needs of that particular area. And as I say, you need to build those capacities. It's vital, for example, that managers are properly trained and that organisational capacity is built before you start rolling out just culture frameworks and putting them into action. In terms of building those organisational capacities, what sort of things are we talking about? It's things like your reporting system. Is that fits for purpose, and building that up so you can receive the information that you want to get. It's around your learning reviews or investigations, and if you want to introduce human factors into those, well, that's going to require some training and resources, and of course creating the time and space for learning. If you're always dealing just with day-to-day issues and you don't have that time and space for learning, well, then you're not going to be able to do anything with the information that you're getting to then obtain the benefits. And of course, there are capacities around training as well. People need to be trained in what just culture is going to look like in their organisation as appropriate to their role, because that's really, really important as far as achieving consistency as you do just culture reviews and making just culture a part of what you do every day.
So all this sounds wonderful, Tony, and I would think it's very exciting. I think if you look at the organisation that's going to be starting on that journey, but obviously we know from our experience that it's difficult to do and to sustain. So to help, I've noted down 5 top mistakes that organizations tend to make when trying to implement and develop a just culture. So mistake number 1, in my view, is that people sometimes focus solely on the individual and then they forget about the organizational learning and the systemic improvements that process might be able to lead to. And the mistake number 2 is the opposite, and the fact that sometimes then the just cultural process focus on the organizational influences and ignores the individual choices. And I think in our last conversation around accountability, you spoke wonderfully about trying to get that balance right. And so rather than being an either or, it's about both of those goals that we're trying to achieve. And I think maybe one of the reasons why those mistakes happen is the third mistake, and that is that we have people maybe that are not necessarily trained or understand the principles of just cultural reviews in as much detail and as depth as we need to. So the hindsight bias creeps into our analysis. Why didn't they just use common sense? So that latent judgment can then start feeding into our just culture review. And maybe also as a result of that lack of understanding, that lack of training of people that are undertaking the just culture reviews, the fourth mistake is sometimes that the just culture framework gets conflated or confused or replaces the investigation or the investigation interviews. And so rather than the investigation being about what happened and why it happened, and the just culture process then about given that happened, how do we respond? The two become mixed up in some way, shape, or form. And then again, that feels unfair maybe to the people that are subject to that just culture review. And I think that the last point is something as well that I think is particularly important and often something that I find missing in organizations as they go down this just culture process, is that the idea that a just culture framework only applies to frontline staff. And instead of that, the idea about mutual accountability, that fairness should be across the breadth and depth of the organization. And I think that's something that's particularly important, that an organization with a well-embedded sense of a just learning culture would have that sense of mutual accountability throughout.
Yeah, and I 100% agree that those are the very common things that you do tend to see, which can make implementing just culture a challenge. But I think, and particularly that what you were saying about only applying to frontline staff, and I think often one of the sort of ultimate tests, if of just culture is it really truly part of who you are and what you do every day as an organization, is when you do have that high impact event that perhaps leads to significant outside scrutiny, whether that's media, regulators, public in general, do you throw the frontline employee under the bus? And your response in that kind of situation is really going to I think show, do you truly have a just culture? Because it's one of those situations where you can spend years building up a just and fair culture, but potentially destroy it in one afternoon.
A lot of damage. You're absolutely right. A lot of damage can be done in one decision, when the pressure is particularly on. I'll even go a step further, Tony, and I think that's a really interesting kind of example of how embedded is our idea of just culture, but also how do we treat whistleblowers or people that bring us bad news. I think is also a really powerful indicator of how ingrained these values are and how well embedded the idea of just culture is. So I suppose it's clear it's not going to be an overnight thing, is it, Tony? It's not going to be something that we can achieve with a few posters, a flowchart, and some mandatory training. There's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of expertise. We're going to have to revisit it. We're going to have to grow and evolve and adapt over time. And I appreciate then that some people might be listening to this and thinking, is it worth it? So what do we get, Tony, from all of that endeavor? What are the benefits do you see from an organization that has a true just and learning culture embedded as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, just culture has been seen as a subculture of a wider safety culture. So it's been regarded as primarily a way to improve safety. And it certainly has a lot to offer in that respect, in terms of encouraging safety reporting through a non-punitive response to human error, but while also retaining standards of accountability, particularly for deliberate harm and things like that. And by encouraging that safety reporting, we can better understand and identify the safety risks and hazards and address them. Though I would argue strongly that just culture is not just a safety thing; it goes wider than that. This idea of justice, particularly from my legal background, it's to my mind a universal human value, and a just and fair workplace is a good thing in of itself. An unjust workplace is a recipe for a toxic culture. And it may also, in this day and age, also be a legal liability for an organisation if it has poor organisational justice. But even just sort of broader than that, just culture, I think there's a whole range of benefits in organizational performance in terms of driving continuous improvement in organizational systems, because you are treating systemic causes rather than symptoms. And so by focusing on systemic factors that make error more likely, the organization can improve over time, and also identify not just obviously errors and mistakes, but also bottlenecks, inefficiencies, areas where it can do better. And so just culture can drive benefits in things like other areas of risk management, so whether it's legal risk, financial risk, reputational, better performing work systems into the quality, reliability, the customer experience, fostering a mindset of creativity and innovation, because employees are more willing to take appropriate risks because they know they're going to be judged on the quality of their decision making rather than just the outcome. Increased employee well-being and team performance, increased staff engagement, because they feel like they can have an impact in their organization and affect change. Decreased staff turnover, for a start, because you're not sacking people unnecessarily for system-related issues, but also more people are willing to stay. Young people in particular regularly cite in surveys that company culture is one of their top considerations when they're assessing job opportunities. So as an organization, if you want to attract the best talent, then a strong company culture that is just and fair and transparent is should be really foremost in mind.
I think that's very true, Tony. And it's interesting that you started off saying that the idea of just culture started off as a subset of safety culture, but actually those benefits that you've identified go well beyond our traditional realms of safety. And I very, very much agree with everything that you said there. I think for me to start to answer that question, I'd maybe pose a counter question, and that would be reflecting on our first conversation, our first episode, is given the damage of blame and fear that can do to an organization, how could an organization afford not to move in this direction? And whilst most people would probably expect me as a safety person to go to those safety reasons to the benefits for that for a just culture, and whilst that's undoubtedly true and a huge factor and importance of my particular perspective, if I had to pick one of the many benefits, I think I'd go a little bit more philosophical. An organization with a well-developed just culture is the kind of organization that I'd want to work with. In fact, it's the only organization I'd work with. And so how we treat people, particularly after incidents, is that sense of justice that you talked about, Tony, I think is absolutely foundational in school to the way I want to work, the way the people I want to work with, and why I think this is so important.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think what you said is very, very powerful, and just really, really important. So if you're looking at these implementation steps that we've talked about, and perhaps, if you out there you want to unlock the organizational benefits that we've been talking about and be that kind of organization that people want to be connected with, but you're thinking, well, I'd like to do that, but I need a little bit more detail and help to plan something that's practical for my specific organization. Well, that's exactly why Paul and I have created the Build Your Just Culture Masterclass, which we've spoken about in previous videos. It's a series of live online sessions led by Paul and myself, which we're launching in January 2025. A lot of organizations face challenges in maintaining safety and quality standards, in retaining high quality staff, building staff engagement, fostering creative and innovative teams, fostering organizational learning, and building efficient, resilient, and effective systems of work. And Just Culture can help in all of these areas of organizational performance. And so if you're facing any of these challenges, then this masterclass, it really is designed for you. The focus of this masterclass is to help you design a Just Culture framework suitable for your organization. It's people who want to build a better workplace culture in their organization, but just looking for the tools and the expert help to get started. So if you're hearing this and you're thinking, this is exactly what I need, I want to introduce Just Culture, but I need some help getting started, you can register your interest at www.justculture.com.au/masterclass. And when the masterclass opens for enrollments, you'll be the first to know and be able to secure a spot. And in addition, if you register your interest before the course opens, we want to respect and honour that, and you'll receive a special early bird discount on the masterclass when enrollments open. A few of the topics that we'll be discussing in the masterclass include the nature of human error, adaptive capacity, how to build systems that promote high performance, how to build individual and organizational accountability that promotes learning, how to establish communication paths that unlock continuous improvement and innovation, and how to put just culture into practice and be able to avoid some of the mistakes that others have made. So it really is packed with a lot of very practical and valuable knowledge that we can help you apply to your organization. We'll be announcing the dates, specific dates and pricing for the masterclass very soon. So make sure you're registered for those updates to get that latest information. So we hope, we hope to see you there. So thank you for joining us. If you like this video, please share it and leave a comment. This is the final video in this series for now. But do let us know if you do have any questions or there's something that you would like us to talk about in future videos. We would love to hear from you. And if we can get together at some point to do some more videos, then we absolutely will. Paul, I have to say it has been an absolute pleasure having these conversations with you, over the last few weeks. I've certainly learned a lot as we've teased through some of these issues together. So, thank you so much for the time that you've taken.
Tony, no, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and likewise, I appreciate all your time and your expertise. It's been a pleasure to look at some of these things, maybe not in the detail that we'd like to be able to look at those things. Hence, the masterclass will begin to introduce some of these ideas, hopefully in a balanced, fair, constructive manner to help people begin to think about what their just culture journey would look like. Although, like I said, I'm very confident that for you and for people watching it, it's not goodbye, but it's just see you soon on the masterclass, and then we can really get into those details. And I'm really, really excited about that. And for me, there's a huge amount of reward and satisfaction seeing organizations start their journey and see those benefits that you talked about today and put them into practice, because that's what the people that work in those organizations, the people that lead those organizations all care about deeply. So for now, thank you very much. See you all soon, hopefully on the masterclass. Take care.